I think we have Duncan here in the room with us. So you're on at the next hour, right?
Correct. How you going, Speed?
So is there maybe a way you can give us a pre-tour for 15 minutes so that we give you a real tour on the right time?
Sure. Well, as you can see in the background, I have a layout. The layout itself is 57 foot. I'm going to cover off on this in the tour anyhow, but just for the benefit, given that Marty's having some technical difficulties at the moment. The layout's 57 foot by 30 foot across 2 garages. I have some unique engineering content within my layout. Just behind me on the left-hand side, I have 2 roll-in, roll-out modules. One actually rolls in and rolls out, and the other one has a pivot point and it rotates around out of the way so that I can bring cars into this garage. The connection between the two garages are 3 individual modules that I designed to wrap around the garage walls. So whenever I'm holding op sessions or something like today, I've put them up, and tonight when we're all finished, they'll be taken down and everything will get put away so I can get cars back into this garage. So just want to touch on a couple of other things just as a housekeeping exercise too. I'd like to thank the NMRA for the opportunity to make this happen. I think given the issues with COVID and the fact that we are not having any conventions anywhere around the world at the moment, this is the best alternative, and I think it's a great result, and it'll be a great result for the NMRA, because I don't know of too many other hobby organisations out there at the moment are in the forefront of doing something like this. So congratulations to the team, Gordy, Speed, Martin, and all the other people involved in the background. I'm sure there is a significant amount of people that have had to do bits in the background to make this work. So credit to you people, to the clinicians. I've been watching this all day, and there's been a wealth of information. The video quality has been pretty good. I think there was one video where the guy was having a storm, wasn't so good, but the rest has been pretty exceptional. So far so good, outside of Marty's issues at the moment with poor old Darren. It's unfortunate because Darren's layout is a very nice Australian type layout. He models an area in Australia, and I used to work down in that area, and when I went to Darren's place for the first time and walked into his layout and seeing what he's done, I thought, wow, he has done that exceptionally well. It's got the feel of the area that he is modelling, and as a modeller myself, anybody comes into my place and says, yeah, I've been to the area that you've modelled, I think that's a real credit to the people who build the models. The other thing it is here in Australia today is it's our Anzac Day, where we remember the people who fought in wars, the lives that have been lost across the Australia and New Zealand. And I just want to say out there, I don't know how many people are listening, but I'd like to, and this goes to obviously the United States and North America and England, and that, just want to give my regards to anybody who's lost members or who've had people who have participated in any conflict over the last couple of 100 years. Appreciate that you're protecting the country and what you've done for each individual nation. So I tip my hat to those people.
Yeah.
How are we going, Marty? Okay. Did you do that or did I do that? Okay. Did you do that, Brad? Brad must have done it. Yeah, rightio. So can you hear me still, Speed?
I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Are you seeing the still screen with me on it now, or are you seeing me on the channel live?
Both places.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Top right-hand corner there. So what I'm going to present today is I pre-taped some stuff yesterday. I pre-taped 40 minutes of footage because I got a fairly big layout, as I've told. And the one thing about it is in the other room, I lose Wi-Fi coverage, so I wouldn't be able to take anybody into the other room today. So we pre-taped it. How I envisage it'll work is when Marty gets us live or when 4 o'clock comes, whichever happens first, I guess this will kick off. I'll give a quick preamble, but I think we're already doing that now. So we'll probably go straight into the 40 minutes of footage of my layout, and then open it up to question and answers.
Not a problem. Well, you might as well run it right through till 5 o'clock if you want.
You want me to start now, mate?
You can start the video.
You want to start in 15 minutes?
No, Speed wants me to hang off, mate. Yep. I don't know whether you can tell, Speed, but Marty is talking to me in the background there, mate. So
don't worry, I can hear him.
Yep. So what can I do here to help the viewers out? Righto. Yeah, good call. So I started in the hobby over 50 years ago. So I'm in my late 50s at the moment. I was about 6 years old when I started. I lived out in the country on a farm, and down in front of the farm, probably about quarter of a mile away from where I lived, there was a railway line and a bridge, and I would quite often get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go out and stand on the steps to the veranda that we had at the time and watch the trains, the steamers in those days, go across that bridge, and I built a passion for railways back then, and very quickly went into getting my first train set when I was 6 or 7 years old, and haven't stopped buying train sets since, culminating in the empire that I have today. I model in N scale. I did start out in 00. I modelled British for a very short period of time, the old Triang Hornby stuff. And then my father happened to go to the United States and brought me back, I think it was a Blue Box F7 Athern, and I got into HO and did that for a couple of years. And then I met a gentleman who had an N-scale layout, and I seen what you could do in N-scale with regards to scenery to track ratio, and I was sold. So I have been basically invested in N-scale ever since. Not that there's anything wrong with any of the other scales. I've been fortunate enough to operate on quite a few layouts around the world. In particular in the United States. I've made about 8 trips to the United States in the last few years, and every time I've linked up with some fellow model railroaders and had the opportunity to operate on some outstanding layouts in those countries. I think that's probably one of the great benefits of this hobby, is the fellowship that we get to have and enjoy, of meeting people around the world and catching up with them whenever the opportunity arises. And like I said, for me, I've been fortunate enough to be invited to many places and operate on some quality layouts, and also, reciprocate. Anybody who ever comes over here, if they reach out to me, more than welcome to come and see my layout, and hopefully I can organise an op session and they can come and operate on it. Pick me. It's not a problem, Speed. You may not want to come after you see it, mate. The fellowship and the friendships. I've made a lot of friends in England and in the United States in this hobby, and they're friends for life. A little bit more about my layout, and I designed this layout for operations. Okay, I'm heavily into the operations side of things of model railroading. This layout is a point-to-point. It's not a continuous run. It operates on DCC and Digitrax I seem to be the exception to the normal over here in Australia. There's way more NCE users over here than Digitrax, but I got into Digitrax way back in when it first came out in the late 80s, and have been using it ever since. And you get to a point, I think, in the hobby where you're so heavily invested in equipment that to change brands or change scales, it just becomes economically unviable unless you're a millionaire, and I'm certainly not a millionaire. The operating sessions, I use the JMRI Ops Pro program, and then I run the switch lists that it generates, which are CSV files. I run them through another hybrid program, and I'll show you here. And I get a printout that has photos of the cars, and basically you get a photo of the car so you can find it. It's got the car number, and it tells you basically where it is and then where it's got to go to down here. So that program, I work with a gentleman in the United States by Dan Foles, and we developed it. He's the guy who understands Excel, and he can do a whole heap of smart stuff with Excel. And I just basically told him what I wanted, what I was trying to achieve, and he developed that program. It is on the JMRI website, I believe, as an attachment you can find and download. And it's a great job, and for me, it works. I used to use car cards and waybills, and there's nothing wrong with car cards and waybills. I think that probably the majority of ops layouts around the country use car cards and waybills. What I found with that is carrying a whole heap of cards in your hand, and when guys are switching, generally, where are they going to stack the cards so they can sort them out? They put them on the layout and all that sort of stuff. So that was not for me. And like I said, just developed this program with Dan, and we use that. Been using it here on this layout for probably the last 4 years of ops sessions. All my operators have got used to it, and I don't think anybody's ever complained about it. And I certainly find it a lot easier. I don't have to go and shuffle car cards and realign waybills at the end of any ops session. All I got to do is tell the system that the trains have been run, and it basically says, well, such and such a freight car is now located in this location. And you then ready, set up for your next session. It's a self-generating system. There is a lot of data entry at the front end, and I've seen a lot of information on the web recently, in particular on the JMRI website, about the to's and fro's of that. But one of the benefits is it actually gives you a database of what you actually hold as a model railroader. And when I entered all my rolling stock into the system, I ended up realizing that I had over 800 freight cars, and I never knew that at all. So, and you've got that. You've got that information for insurance purposes and for future purposes, and you can put a whole heap of other stuff in there. Generally, this layout I'll have 20 guys at operating sessions here, and it runs quite comfortably with 20 people. I send out an invite I've got a group of, I think there's about 35 people on my invite list to op sessions. Invariably, I end up with about 15 to 20 people that nominate to come, and then you get a couple of late pullouts. So when I run with 16, between 14 and 16 is the sweet spot for operations on this layout. It's a nice number. I run with a dispatcher. I don't have signaling yet. That's something that is in the future. But when you get the tour around the layout, you'll see that I've still got a lot of other things to do before I do signaling. I'm currently working on scenery projects, trying to catch up. The last 2 years leading into 2020 was more around expanding the layout and doing lots of track lane and roll in, roll out modules, which now this year I made myself the New Year's Eve wish that I would focus on scenery this year, and that's what I've been doing. So you'll get to see some of my new scenery activity when we tour the layout. Scenery-wise, the layout's probably 50% complete, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. Certainly to first pass level, it would probably be 70% complete to first pass level. But I want to go back and redo a lot of stuff and put a lot more detail in. How I do my scenery, because it is such a big layout, is trying to get through and get at least scenery done in what I call a layered approach. Get the first layer on, and then I'm trying to achieve that this year, to get the whole layout with the backdrop painted and the first layer of scenery on, and then over the next couple of years I'll go back and do the detailing and all the other things that we need to do. NMRA here in Australia is it's probably not a big organisation. We have some 760 odd members across the states of Australia. Fortunately, I'm the Div Super of Queensland, Div 1, and we have nearly half the membership here. So Queensland is quite an active NMRA fraternity. And we need to continue to foster that. And I think things like what we're doing today, and I hope some of the Queensland members are watching, seeing this and going, yep, I need to bring more people in to the membership, because this is where we can add value to their membership, basically, is the going online stuff, visiting layouts that you don't generally get to see, the clinics. I've never really been one to be involved in clubs. So I can't speak for that, but I don't know if clubs hold too many clinics, whereas we are trying to target every meeting that we were having until COVID was doing at least 1 or 2 clinics at the meeting, so that the membership can take some skills away from that, and the skilled members are passing on new skills to other people, which I see is important for what we're about.
Sorry to interrupt, but for the timekeepers, 5 minutes.
Good stuff, Speed. Am I boring you, mate?
No, I just want you to know that in 5 minutes, the real thing is going to begin.
No, that's all right. In 5 minutes, you'll stop listening to me and you'll start listening to the other Duncan on the screen there with the orange shirt, and I'll go and get a scotch.
Are you putting your twin brother on?
Yeah, my twin brother will come on, and then he'll hand it back to me at the back end, so we can hopefully get some questions out of people. Let's just see how that goes. So, yeah. Trying to keep this going, 4 minutes to go. I model modern era. I don't have any steam on my layout unless people like Martin bring it up and put it on my layout when I'm not looking, and run it around. Mine is basically the era that I model is 2005 onwards. Some people out there might see it and go, oh, that item of equipment wasn't around in 2005. You know, I don't care about that. At the end of the day, if it's on my layout, it's there, and it's gonna run around and provide a freight service for all the businesses that my layout are supposed to service. Each town on the layout has a yard, and those and I have unit trains, I have through freights, I have manifest freights, and I have a one passenger train, one Amtrak that runs during an op session. Now the through freights obviously go from one end of the layout to the other end of the layout, and they represent basically, you know, what the modern prototypes are doing now. Basically, they're just through freight traffic from one major hub to another major hub for a short line to distribute out. My manifests are the workhorses on the layout. They will go from one end of the layout to the other end. During an op session can take up to 2.5 hours for a manifest to go from one end of the layout to the other. They drop off blocks of cars and pick up blocks of cars from each town on the layout, and then each town on the layout has a local switcher, and it picks up and distributes to industries as per the switch list that I showed you earlier on, and then it brings back whatever's got to go to staging or to other areas on the layout back to that town yard, and the next manifest that comes through will be scheduled to pick it up.
Question here in a live feed. Do you guys have difficulty obtaining US prototypes in Australia?
No, not at all. The only difficulty we have is the exchange rate at the moment, because the Australian dollar is only about 55 to 57 cents USD, so it's become quite expensive for us to order stuff out of the United States. And the other thing I'm finding is, and we've been finding for a long time, is the postage out of the United States is quite expensive. But outside of that, and look, we have local model shops here and local people who will order in for other people, and that all works too. But the reality is, it's just general business for here. If you need to order something and you've got to order it from the United States, that's what you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of Australian modelers that models Australian trains.
Yes, it's certainly becoming way more prevalent. I guess you need to understand that way back in the 30 years ago, the off-the-shelf, ready-to-run stuff was basically American prototype. Okay, there was very little Australian prototype off the shelf. So if you were to model an Australian layout, then you had to do a lot of scratch building.
Okay.
That's changed. There's several prototype manufacturers here in Australia now that model Australian prototype stuff. If you had been able to see Darren's layout, you would have been able to see that. And you can buy really good Australian prototype off-the-shelf rolling stock and locomotives, including sound. So yeah, it's. If I was starting out again, I still wouldn't change anything that I'm doing. I would still model the American prototype because I like the big size and the big boxiness of the shapes of the engines and the rolling stock. Australia's a little bit different in that regard. Our prototype railroads here are fairly ad hoc with rolling stock, and there's not a lot of branch lines and things like that. Australian modelers may jump down my throat any second now, but that's how I see it. Anyhow, I think it's 1 minute past 5, and I've wobbled on now for at least 20 to 25 minutes. What do you reckon we run the 40-minute overview of my layout, and then I'll go back to the other Duncan, and he can talk to you again.
We're ready.
No worries. Right. Well, Brad, you might as well, you're in charge of the video there. You can run the video.
You're going to do a layout tour of my layout. Union Pacific, Burlington Northern Santa Fe Joint Division, and that's a hell of a mouthful. So from now on, let's just call it the JD. I started this layout back in 2006, and it is housed across two separate garages. One's a two-car garage. That's what we're sitting in at the moment. And the other garage is a three-car garage, which is attached to the house. I have some unique engineering designs on this layout to actually make those connections work, because the connections are removable, so I can close the garages. I put the modules up when we hold operating sessions, to which is where I get probably the most enjoyment out of this hobby. Is I built this layout for operations, and I just love seeing people run this railroad like a real railroad. The prototype I model, I'm a prototype modeler, is from Portland, Oregon to parts north of Spokane, the Union Pacific old washi line. And for those of you that are familiar with the area, there are some scenes on this layout that I've tried to give prototype authenticity to. I wouldn't say I've done an absolute scratch-built things that are exactly like what's in the real place, but certainly names of towns, locations of towns, and also signage on the layout are all taken from the real industries, etc., in those areas in the real world. The layout is 57 foot by 30 foot, and we're about to take you on a journey.
Dispatch, this is CFA 563. We need to go to Marshall from Yardley West.
We're waiting for the roll to go. Yeah, we're coming. Not just me then. Hell, wait for you. I can't get out.
Probably more of an effective laptop than announcers. They look easy to read, clicking again,
Yeah, you're clear. They'll come in on the other line. Yeah, you're clear to go forward, mate. You'll come in on the other main.
So you're coming on this track. Oh, okay, right. So you're looking at that, right? Alright, so I can go up to Yardley.
No, we need to have a way to get around to go to Oh, sorry, just got to room.
So we'd have to come in on that arrival track, Duncan. They're already consistent. So all you need to do is dial up to 9704.
Dispatch Brown.
Dispatch just letting that Peruta is just exiting the helix now, coming on the flat.
Yeah, Bruni, you're clear through Boardman.
I think dispatch will okay.
Nothing on that blue winter. So just get that sat there, and slowly build up that 3 round. We'll start the journey on the Union Pacific, Burlington Northern Santa Fe Joint Division layout on the lower deck at Western Staging. Now, Western Staging on my layout represents 2 yards in Portland, Oregon. 1 yard being the Union Pacific Albina yard, and the other yard being Burlington Northern Santa Fe Lakes yard. In this staging yard, I have 4 21-foot 6-inch tracks, or in metric terms 6.5 metres. There is 5 10-foot tracks, in metric terms 3.5 metres, and there are 3 13-foot tracks, in metric terms 4 metres, 4.5 metres long. The staging tracks are not divided to represent Lakes Road on one side and Albina Yard on the other side. During an operating session, the operators are instructed that if they have a long train, they are to take the next longest track that will accommodate their train. This way, we don't have the event where the 52-car coal train comes in and there are only short tracks left. So, any train that is running eastbound will depart out of this yard, and from here they will follow the main line to Boardman, which is the next major town on the layout. Now, those of you who know the area will say, what about the Dells? What about Hood River? And probably a couple other places in between. The reality is I have not modelled that part of the Union Pacific line along the Columbia River yet, i.e. watch this space. It is my intent that at some stage I will have the Dells and I will have Hood River represented on the layout. But for now, basically trains depart Portland and they head to Boardman. Just for a little bit of future reference, so you can all understand geographically where things are located on the model, I'm going to go up to the upper deck. West staging sits below Yardley Yard on the upper deck. So Yardley Yard is in Spokane, and we'll focus on this later on during this tour, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a insight into it now. And just if I pan around a bit, you can now get a feel for where West staging actually sits. Remembering that this layout is spread across 2 separate garages, rooms, whatever you want to call them, and I'm currently in the external garage, or the one that's not connected to the house. Well, that covers off on West staging. So now we've covered off on West staging. Let's tour the main line. Departing west staging, trains will leave and head out of this layout room to the house garage. I have a big, long, sweeping S-curve here that goes through a hole in the wall. Everybody has to have a hole in the wall, don't they? So coming out of the hole in the wall, as you can see, we're pretty much bathed in bright sunlight here today. It is sunny Queensland. This is on the lower deck, and these are the removable modules. Okay, so you can see the upper deck there. Just so happens that there's a director's special. They've pulled up on the upper deck to take some photos of the Snake River. But let's just focus on the lower deck for now. That will eventually have basically a cliff face on the backside of the tracks. What I've tried to model here is concrete mainline and swinging around. Now this is my latest project area. I'm starting to work on scenery in this area. These what started out as styrofoam blocks now represent the basalt cliffs along the Columbia River. The main line follows along there. Into Nally Bay. There's a boat ramp there. I don't know what's happened to the trailer that car was towing. I think he might have lost it into Nally Bay. And the next part of this, or the next phase of this project, is to do the township of Boardman. So the town of Boardman, the track in front here, right in the foreground, is the branch line going up to Boardman branch, which actually goes out to a power station, a coal-fired power station in the area, and I model that. We'll cover off on that bit in a latter part of the journey. We come back into the industries of Boardman. We have Conagra Foods, which is a potato chip frozen potato factory. There's a yard in Boardman, so during operating sessions, trains are made up here, or locals are made up here, and they go out and they switch out the industries in Boardman, delivering empties and loads, whatever is required as per the switch list program. And then the manifest trains that come through the town pick up those pickups that are going to other areas of the world. Tread-it, and actually a real industry in Boardman. Phillips Plywood, not. It's named after one of the gentlemen, a very good friend of mine, Trevor Phillips, who's helped me on the layout. The layout this size, you certainly need people helping you. I'd say that I've probably done 90% of the work, but certainly the other 10% has been done by some key people who are great friends and great modelers. So there's a spiral. It takes us up to the upper deck on the outskirts of Boardman. And this spiral is aptly named Spiral. Funny that. Now we're going up to the upper deck. That bridge will go in there sooner or later. And we're coming into Wallula. Wallula is the next switching area on the layout. On the outskirts of Wallula, we have the speciality minerals, and Boys Cascade paper plant, which are actually in Wallula. As I said, I'm a prototype modeller, so I have tried to model the real industries that are in the areas of each town. Here there's a fairly substantial container yard that is mostly taking products from the paper plant and distributing them again to other parts of the world. There's a yard in Wallula and it operates the same as Boardman. Manifest, drop off and pick up blocks of cars, and the locals grab the blocks of cars that are dropped off and switch out the industries and bring back blocks of cars to be put onto manifest when they arrive to be distributed to wherever they're going. Now, Wallula and Boardman, there's a bit of a story behind them. They were part of a show layout that I participated on with a few other people. A gentleman by the name of Gary Paper did a lot of this work on these modules, so I can't take claim for everything here. Gary is an absolutely wonderful modeller. He's very skillful and has access to some tools that us mere mortals don't have, given that he's a cabinet maker. Joiner by trade, but his modelling and what he's put in. From Wallula, the mainline leaves and heads eastbound, goes past one last industry. It's Tyson Foods, which is a meatworks. We depart Wallula on a single track mainline, across the highway overpass, and then we're into country Oregon again. This here, once I've done the scene, is just going to be some farmland. We're crossing a small river that feeds the Snake River here. Around a nice sweeping S-curve, and we start to hit the basalt cliffs again that are along the Snake River, much the same as the Columbia River. Lovely, beautiful, sunshiny day here, and wow. Modeller's license, I've tried to compress it, and yeah, it's not finished yet. It's got a long way to go, obviously. It's still white styrofoam, and the trestle vents aren't fully attached, but that'll be probably one of my next projects that I'm going to get onto. We come off Yoso Trestle. Now we're heading back into the standalone garage again on the removable modules, and then we go back into the main layout room. The line comes out of a tunnel with a snow shed and curves around. The river represents Palouse River, and there's a branch line that takes off here and goes to a coal mine. Given that I work in the coal industry, I had to represent a coal mine on the layout. Don't hold that against me. All you environmentalists out there, coal isn't as bad as what everybody makes it out to be. Following the scene. So the coal mine's on the opposite side of the backdrop, and on this side I've modelled a power plant. That's Hopper Junction. Now, the branch line that goes to the coal mine actually comes out at the power plant and vice versa. So I have a loads in, empties out operation that happens during a operating session. The main line is now coming up to Summit, where it reaches the bridge, crosses the bridge, so we do a 90-degree turn here at 180-degree turn here on a peninsula. The radius of the turn is about 550 millimeters in metric terms. I'm thinking that that's probably about 28 inches imperial, which is quite a large radius when you're talking N scale. And we're coming into the town of Cheney. And this is actually a really neat spot to do take photos from during op sessions, and you get the nice sweeping S curves. Again, Cheney, like the other towns, has a little small yard for drop-offs of block, lots of cars. Has some significant industries in Cheney. There's a Cement West, which is a limestone crushing plant. Then there's Yonkins Brewing there in the background, Ord Industries in the foreground, again named after one of the guys who's contributed to this layout. And then the ADM milling here in the foreground is actually, there is an ADM milling in Cheney. In actual fact, doesn't look unlike what I've modelled there. So small Amtrak station. And over in the background is Yonkins Brewing. Now, Yonkins Brewing is named after one of my great model railroad buddies in the United States, Jim Yonkins, who has a magnificent layout in his own right, the Mud Bay and Southern. And yeah, I cannot speak highly enough of Jim as a human being, let alone a modeller. He's just one of life's true gentlemen. Leaving Cheney, but with one last look back from the other direction. We follow through the forest up through Marshall Canyon. So there's a coal mine in Marshall Canyon, and we head round a bend again, and now we're coming up the slopes of Marshall Canyon and heading into Spokane. And what I've represented in Spokane is industries and a main yard, which is the main yard on the layout, Yardley Yard. So during an op session, Yardley Yard is a hub of activity, as you can appreciate. So we have, I think from memory, 5 locals are generated out of Yardley Yard. Not sure if I'm in focus or out of focus here. There's a significant amount of classifying that goes on here. I generally have a yard master and 2 switchers on duty here during an op session, and they'll see a turnover of a couple of 100 cars. And there's industries on both sides of the yard. In hindsight, and in such a wonderful tool, in hindsight, I would have had the yard here at the front and the industries behind, mainly for uncoupling reasons and things like that. guys are always leaning in to do uncoupling. Inevitably, things get crunched on the near the fascia of the layout, but you got to live with that. That's how it is. And Yardley Yard goes through a stub wall. I'll just give you a sneak preview of the other side across the Spokane River. But again, I'll give you one more look back in at Yardley Yard. Before we move on. Okay, so back to Spokane River. We leave Yardley Yard and we cross the Spokane River. We go through a little bit of scenery. This is still in the city of Spokane, obviously. That will be an engine service facility there, where you can see the grey concrete and some engines behind the trees. We have a Purina Mills, which is a dog food, animal food plant. Creates a fair bit of traffic. It has a dedicated unit train. Strangely enough, the unit train is called the Purina train. I'm really surprised about that. We go around another sweeping bend here, small suburbs of Spokane. As we go, we'll go underneath a road overpass and through another stub wall. Now we're coming to the town, an industrial area of Mill Lakes. Which in a minute I'll give you a pan view from the opposite angle. So here's your pan view of the start of Mill Lakes from the opposite angle. We've got a small town as we come through the wall, but then we go into the industries of Mill Lakes. Now, Mill Lakes is an abbreviation. It's Millwood on the far side of the Mainline and Lakes Road on the near side of the Mainline. And during an op session, we have a Millwood switcher and a Lakes Road switcher. So they switch out opposite sides of the Mainline. Swinging around the Mainline here, we curve. Now, this was where the layout actually used to finish up until about 2 years ago. This is just past this highway overpass that's coming up here. Right there, east staging started. But I'm driven by having long runs, and I don't like coming out of staging and going straight into an industrial area. So I ripped out east staging, put it down below, which we'll get to soon enough. So it sits underneath this industrial area here. The lump of wood in the background is currently making do as the CXT, which is a concrete sleeper facility. So if you can have a look there, you'll see some concrete sleepers. In the background, just past where the tank cars are there's heading into there. In the background there is an interchange. So by that I mean the local from Yardley Yard will bring out lots of cars, drop them on the interchange, pick up the returns, and then a industrial switcher will switch out the Millwood area out of this interchange. Here I'm going to have a timber plant of some description, and also if you have a look, Google's such a wonderful tool. I'm going to model that Western State Asphalt. And this CHS Agrarium is actually the transition bridge. So this little section here pulls out because I'm going outside of the garage door now into a small shed that houses a helix. I'll just take a step back so you get the picture. Try not to show you too much of the clutter. But you can see there's the lower deck and the upper deck. Oh, yes, and the helix room. So I have two helixes on this layout. One you've already seen, and this is the second one housed in its own little shed, for want of a better word. So we'll poke the camera in there. Trains come off the garage layout and cross there and start heading down 6-turn spiral, double track, housed in its own garage. Sorry, not garage, but you know what I mean. Hell, it's been a long day, boys and girls. Comes out the bottom. Don't mind the mess. This is by the way, this is a removable section here, right there, and comes into east staging. So this journey now brings us to the opposite end of the UP BNSF JD. This is east staging. Again, similar to west staging, it is a 12-track staging yard. And this staging has mostly 20-foot long staging tracks, so there is no real issues with regards to holding long trains during operating sessions. However, this yard in itself is actually split across two 6-track staging yards. On one side, we have the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and on the other side, we have the Union Pacific. Now, the reason behind that on east staging is because geographically, if you follow the Union Pacific line that I represent, which is the old Spokane International line, it goes up into Canada. It goes leaves Spokane and parallels the BNSF for some 100 miles, but then it heads north up into Canada, whereas the BNSF turns eastbound after Bonners Ferry and heads towards across the Montana and towards Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then into Chicago. So I have actually separated basically what we will call both the lines here into two separate 6-track staging yards. So what you're looking at here is pretty close to the throat of the staging yard. You can see my potash train there is ready to go. As we go further down the yard, and like west staging, it swings around a bend to give me the length that I needed. And again, it is on the lower deck, so it follows along that back wall there. So last but not least, here we have returned to Boardman, where the Rogers Run branch line leaves Boardman and goes to the Portland General Electric Power Plant. I've simulated this branch line, and I've also included some industries, which are now aptly located in the North Boardman area. You can see the branch line swings around in front of the township of Boardman. And a nice sweeping curve past the Kenny Plastics factory, again named after one of my good American friends. Into North Boardman industrial area. There we have a limestone or a concrete powder plant. So limestone that comes out of the Cement West plant in Cheney, unit trains come down from there to this plant here and are secondary crushed and then turned into concrete powder. We also have Zen Chemicals, and we will also have a biofuels plant in this area here on that return loop. So in the middle of that is going to be a biofuels processing plant. So there'll be an unloading facility for all the grain that's in those wagons, and also tank trains will come in there to pick up ethanol. But out here on these two tracks here is the branch line that's going down to Portland General Electric. We'll follow that around now because it goes around behind the backdrop. Something I haven't spoken about yet, but is this branch line is actually removable. So it rolls out of the way when I don't have operating sessions, and so I can get cars into this house garage. I'll give you a little bit of insight into that in a minute. This particular curved trestle here was on a previous layout and it was too nice to not to use again. So I'm hoping to build a nice gulch type scene around that. And the branch goes down again, another return loop, which will be the power plant. So coal coming from the Cheat River coal mine on the layout, way back near Yardley Yard in Marshall Canyon, comes to this power plant. That now concludes our journey of the JD. I hope you've enjoyed your 40 to 45 minutes of time touring my layout. It has been interesting trying to put this together, and I still have to go to the editing room now and cut out all the bits that were pretty ordinary, which I'm sure there were quite a few. But the reality is, thank you for participating in this. I'd like to take special note and thank Martin Jenkins, who has been the superintendent of this particular process for the live streaming. And I've been working with Martin in the background, and another gentleman called Brad Anderson from Lismore in New South Wales, with a view to trying to live stream our NMRA meetings and probably a lot more going forward to get broader exposure of the NMRA out there to people. So I hope you've enjoyed this journey. It's been interesting putting this DVD or pre-DVD together. Has been quite challenging, but I hope it gives you a bit of a snapshot as to my layout and my modelling of, or should I say, my N-scale representation of the old Washi line, and I hope you've enjoyed the journey. Thank you.
Well,
It's the other Duncan in now.
Well, that came out well, I think.
I don't know.
I've been watching it here on the live stream, and it's turned out quite well. As people might know, the internet in Australia is not what you have in America. So for us to do this down here is quite amazing. What actually happened then, it was Brad streamed that video from New South Wales back to here so we could send it to Queensland. So no wonder I've been looking like a duck paddling madly underwater since about 9 o'clock this morning. But things are working well. Now, let me have a little look in the chat.
I think we need to thank Brad, or I need to thank Brad for piecing that together and playing the part that you did, Brad. You did a good job, mate.
That was fun. Much appreciated. Enjoyed the layout. I'll start off the questions while you're having a look through the chat there, Martin. Why did you choose that area to model, and why did you go down the prototype side rather than a freelance layout?
Good question. Originally, and I'm going back before I moved to Brisbane. So pre-2006, I had another quite large layout up in Mackay. And I originally started out modelling the Utah area and Utah to Pocatello. I'm just trying to think of the name of the town in Utah. It certainly wasn't where the convention was last time over there. And I don't know. I had been to Washington State, Oregon State previously, really enjoyed the scenery. Given that I guess I always was a Union Pacific person originally, that I guess combining that with the scenery in the area, I decided that I was going to model, that particular line, which was the old Spokane International line. It just kind of all fell into place. Why prototype modeling versus freelancing it? The many trips I've been there and the many photos I have, I guess it give me the opportunity to at least give some authenticity to what I'm trying to do. As I said earlier on, I'm into operations, but I want operations to be realistic as much in my head as anything else. So to put perspective to it, when I see a freight car and I know it's going to Atlas Electrical in Lakes Road, I can remember being there, standing outside Atlas Electrical in Lakes Road, taking photographs. So I guess it's probably a combination of it jogs memory and all that sort of stuff. But good question, Brad.
Well, there's a couple of questions in the chat here. There's one regarding your conifer trees. Do you make your own?
Yes, we do. So, as you know, Martin, that there's a mutual friend of ours who's got a machine that we build multiple conifer trees at one go. When I say multiple, please don't any viewer out there think that it's hundreds. It's 4 or 5 or 6, but certainly way faster than one at a time. The area that I model obviously has a plethora of conifer trees, so we had to establish a methodology on what to do. We grabbed some stuff off YouTube, and I'm going back to 2014 now. And Steve come up with a design for a jig. So we built the jig, and Bob's your uncle. And we make the armatures and the string, for want of a better word, branches, and then from the rest of that is something that I've developed, the spray painting with the highlights of the light green and the dark green and the brown, and then using the grass flock on the trees that are in the foreground, static grass that is. You get trees that you can put in the background, you get trees that you can put in the foreground.
We had a comment here from Graham Stockfield. He said it was great to hear all the birds.
Oh, look, I don't know where Graham comes from, but unfortunately in Australia we had all our guns taken off us many years ago when we had a national crisis. And you know what? Can't go out and cull the birds, unfortunately. And yes, that is a day-end thing.
And Peter Bush is all the way over in the UK. He must have just got up now and he's eating his cornflakes as he watches this. He wants to know, do you have a website for your layout? And Craig Mackey has actually put a copy of your blog address in there. So
yeah, good stuff. Yes, I do. It was actually in there, but my blog address is upbnsf.jointdivision. No, sorry, I think it's upbnsfjointdivision.blogspot.com.au. Don't forget the AU on the end. I think that this stuff is going to be put on some format so people can access it. Martin, is that true?
We hope to get this onto YouTube eventually, but
not immediately.
But it will be on Facebook immediately.
Okay, well, if they look at that and Brad kindly put my contact information there. I've also got my email address there if anybody wants to reach out to me and ask questions, or you want to get access to information or what I've done and what I haven't done. Please contact me, and I will respond.
Oh, Graham's down in Melbourne, so
okay, cool.
Yep, he'll be rugged up now. It's sun's gone down.
It's actually gone down here too.
Now,
Barry Gibson in there commented on your helix in the shed. Said it was an interesting concept. I'll throw another question into the mix quickly. What's next for the layout for you?
You load the questions, Brad. Scenery, mate. I really need to get the scenery. I figure that you probably only get 1 to 2 chances in a lifetime to build a big layout. And I've got that chance, so I want to finish what I've got done here scenery-wise. So that's where my focus is at the moment. I think you may have noted that I did mention the Dells and the Hood River early on in the piece. That still needs to be modelled, but I will leave that on the back burner for now. I want to get back into op sessions. I truly miss having the op sessions and the camaraderie of having all the operators around here. Read that. I miss you guys. So scenery, and then probably I want to do some signalling of the layout, and then I'll think about expansion. And it's inevitable at some stage I'm probably going to have to downsize. When that is, I don't know, and I hope it's not in the foreseeable future, but I'm going to live the dream while I can, because one day I'm going to have to downsize.
Okay. Noel's also asked, what size is the radius of that helix?
The double track or the single track. I'll just say the single track is 485 millimeter radius. Read that as radius, okay? And the double track helix, the one that's in the shed, is bigger. So the grade on the helix, in the single track helix in the house garage, is 1.3, and the grade on the helix in the shed, standalone shed, is 1.1. Next.
Yeah, go ahead, Martin. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say I just tried to actually get my own camera into this conversation, and OBS has pulled all my cameras away, so that's why I've suddenly disappeared off the screen. But I'm still here in the background.
Oh, you're best heard and not seen, Martin.
Well, people tell me I got a face for radio, so
haven't we all?
So Brad's going to have to take over on the reading of chat and actually being on there. Have we got any others here?
No, I see some of the local Queenslanders are starting to jump in. Paul's in the chat there.
Good stuff.
I saw Craig before, so some of the Aussies are starting to come out of hibernation for the day and into nightlife, so that's good.
Yes, and I think a few of our American friends are probably all gone off to Betty Buys or only just getting up now. So
they'd all be snoring their head off now, mate. So I imagine the numbers have dropped right off. I'm not sure what.
We're still maintaining 100 during your videos, so 104 to 110. We've dropped back a bit now. We're about 93, 94.
Okay.
But it's all looking good. But yeah, excellent, Duncan. I can attest to operating on Duncan's layout. The only problem I seem to have is my eyesight. I can't read the side of these N-scale wagons. So unfortunately, when I get to the town and it's a blue box car, it's any blue box car, which upsets the flow of things eventually. But anyway, it's good fun.
Martin, I actually think that works for a couple of other people as well, mate. So don't feel like you're the only one who's doing that.
I think a few of our American friends.
Yeah. So what's the process when I hit 5, mate? Just they're all snoring the head off now, mate. So I imagine the numbers have dropped right off. I'm not sure.
Oh, we're still maintaining Jerry, mute your stream. So 104 to 110. We've dropped back a bit now. We're about Jerry, you need to mute the computer you're watching the stream on, and that will get rid of the delay. Okay, well, we're up to 5 minutes. We got any more questions that have come in, Brad?
No, there's still quite a few guys over in the States. They're still up watching, probably running on coffee through their veins.
Oh, Ralph's up late. Yeah, he's still going there out in the distance. Oh, sorry about that. Well, yeah, that's good. We've got coverage all the way around the world. So, okay, well, we've got
Jerry finally got the message.
Jerry's here. He's ready to go by the looks of it. He's if I unmute him, we should be able to hear him.
Quick question from me, Martin. Any